I am Sean Webb, and this is your superior self.
Hi, this is Zach Poitra, and this is Your Superior Self.
I'm Andy Mant, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Sue Jackson, and this is Your Superior Self.
This is Spring Washam, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back. Special shout out to all the moms out there. You guys are the real winners. You guys are the heroes of the day. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you so much for all that you do. I couldn't make it in this world without my wife being the mom that she is, nor could I make it through this life without the moms that I have in my life. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do for our kids. Thank you so much for all the love that you show them and the care that you give them. And you guys have earned every bit of that glass of wine and that nice warm bubble bath with candles lit that you'll never get because the kids just continuously hound you and stalk you and want more food and attention and milk bottles and want you to pay attention to them. But today is your day. It is Mother's Day. You deserve every bit of that. Go get you some. Go get a warm bath right now. Get a glass of wine. I don't care what time it is. You deserve every bit of that relaxation. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do. I appreciate all moms. They are special. But before we get into today's episode with Dr. Hanscom, I wanted to give a shout out to a special Instagram account. It's called Dude Dad, and it's hilarious. Go check him out. He makes videos making fun of his wife. It's funny, I'm making this this shout out after giving much love to the moms, but he makes fun of his wife, and it's pretty hilarious. Like, he'll dress up as her. I don't know her, so I don't know if she acts like I don't know if he's making fun of all moms or all wives, but it's pretty funny. And, check it out. Give him some love. Follow him. It's pretty funny. I love there's like a group of Target dads that meet out in the parking lot of Target, and they kind of tailgate while their wives go into Target, and it's pretty funny, actually. But go check him out. Dude Dad on Instagram. But getting back to today's episode with Dr. David Hanscom, who is an orthopedic complex spinal deformity surgeon. I didn't even know that existed, but it's important because he left his surgical practice in 2018 with over 32 years of experience to focus on teaching people how to break the grip of chronic mental and physical pain. Now, you might be asking yourself, what constitute as chronic mental and physical pain? Well, in this episode, he talks a lot about anxiety and how anxiety is the release of neurochemicals in your mind. Whenever you're in a situation, your body will release cortisol, and if you're in a situation that is wired in your brain to be bad, it's going to release this cortisol chemical in your brain, and he talks more about that here.
It's simply a neurochemical survival reflex. Every living creature has it. Every human has it. Why would you call that a diagnosis or a disorder? It's actually the gift of life. If you didn't have anxiety, you wouldn't eat, you wouldn't breathe, you wouldn't take care of yourself. And the way we evolved as humans is that the species of creatures that paid attention to their environmental cues and took evasive action, they survived based on this evasive survival response. Okay, going back to human beings, we put the label on it called anxiety. And anxiety is not a psychological diagnosis. It's a neurochemical survival reflex that says danger.
I think this episode will help a lot of people because it helped me understand the basics of the chemicals that are going through your mind when you feel anxiety, when you feel depression, and understanding that, and that there's nothing wrong with you, and that these chemicals are happening for some type of reason, whether your brain has wired the situation that you're currently in to be bad in your brain, or your brain has wired it to be good. So depending on the good or the bad, your brain's going to release certain neurochemicals in your brain into your body that's going to make you feel good or bad. And to understand that, so that way you can kind of realize when the bad chemicals, cortisol, are being either dripped or flooded into your body. And when you feel anxiety or depression, you can say, hey, look, cortisol is being flooded into my body right now. For whatever reasons, I pre-wired this experience in my brain, in my cortex, and now I'm experiencing negative effects. How do I get out of that? And this episode goes into some techniques that you can use to kind of capture the moment, to realize the moment, and to kind of reset. That's why I love it so much. And if you want some more resources on understanding the chemicals that are going on in your body, Habits of a Happy Brain by Dr. Loretta Bruning, who's coming on the show. And I truly do believe that this is a good resource for those who don't fully understand the chemicals that are produced in their minds. And I think that it definitely helped me. It really created a basic understanding of what's going on and how I can manage and how can I rewire some of the chemicals that are being produced in certain situations. And I highly suggest you guys pick it up and read it. But with that said, guys, you can follow me on all social media platforms. Follow me on Instagram at TDowns80, on Twitter at DownsTrey, and on Facebook at Trey Downs. You can also follow the show's website or webpage on Facebook, Your Superior Self, or you can actually go to the new website. It's not new, but I kind of did a redesign, yoursuperiorself.com. Let me know what you guys think about the website. But with that said, guys, I'm excited about the conversation. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Hanscom.
Hi, Trey. This is David Hanscom. I'm extremely excited to be on your show. I like your approach. I looked at your website, and you have a lot going on. I'm excited.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It means a lot coming from you. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on. You took a huge jump, a huge sacrifice to do what you're passionate about. I want to roll right into this. So we just met, and you're hitting on some of the topics that I'm very interested in and very passionate about. So you just talked to me about a blog that you just wrote called The Myth of what was it?
Self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, let me go back way in the story here. So I spent 20 years doing construction work, heavy construction work, concrete work. I ended up with 2 back surgeries and partially deaf because of my time in the construction world. I was an incredibly hard worker, but what drove me was this sense of, I would like to say I was smarter back then, but I came from a tough background. From my perspective, I was never good enough. I was a perfectionist. And let me ask you a question. Is perfectionistic sound like a good trait to you or a difficult trait?
It sounds like a very tiresome trait.
Right. But in the medical world, that's held up as a virtue.
Mm.
And I think in medical professions, or you look at the marketing, I think the word perfection is held up as sort of a standard that we're all trying for perfection. Is that a fair statement?
No, absolutely.
Okay. So the problem with perfectionism is that the difference between your concept of what perfect looks like and your reality is the degree of your unhappiness. It's always never good enough, never good enough, never good enough. It's that negative drive that causes many of us to become high-level professionals, whether it's physicians, surgeons, lawyers, business people, contractors, whoever. People that are high-level performers often are driven by this not good enough sound in their head. So we're held up as a virtue that your patients want you to be perfect, your mentors expect you to be perfect. The problem is it is a judgment pattern. It's a judgment. It's a negative self-judgment that drives you and drives you and drives you. That's a much different energy than here I am, this is where I want to go, and these are the steps I'm going to take to get there. That's a vision of excellence. So it took me a complete burnout in medicine to realize there's a difference. I thought perfection was the goal. And of course, I never was perfect. So it's like an endless drive to be perfect that never stops. And so that, unfortunately, that adrenaline drive that takes you up the hill takes you right down the other side. So right now, the burnout in medicine is between 55 to 65%, depending on what profession you're talking about. We have a high divorce rate. Women physicians have 400% higher suicide rate than the average population. Male physicians, 300% suicide rate. So it begs the question of how do you define success? Because you go all the way through medical school, residency, fellowship, or practice, and you commit suicide, or you're burned out, anxious, and depressed, that, to me, isn't success.
Mm-mm.
But people look at doctors and say, well, they have it made. They have money, they have prestige, all these types of different things going on. And my son, who is in sales for a long time, just thought I was out of my mind. How can you have all these things and be burned out? How's that possible? Well, the driving force is this perfectionism, which creates this endless anxiety, which keeps driving you. But where's the end point? It's not there. So what happens is that since you're self-judgmental, then you tend to project your judgment on other people. We're judged by our mentors. We judge ourselves. We judge the people we're training. We're judgmental to our patients. It turns out that the culture of medicine is really not a very nice society as far as the way we treat each other. It's a very judgmental, vindictive society. And there's just endless stories of my entire 32 career of people just really treat each other badly in medicine. The other problem in medicine is that we are really under a huge amount of stress. We do know, the data shows that pre-medical students have a higher than average compassion index measured by the Jefferson Compassion Scale. And by the third year medical school, it just plummets. So long hours, lots of criticism, no endpoint. And the work ethic is admirable, but it's impossible. Then what also happens in the culture of medicine, we have endless people looking over shoulders, state boards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a high, besides suicide, there's high instances of drug abuse, depression, failed marriages, et cetera. So how do you define success? Plus, there's no mercy. People expect us to be above it all. We expect to be above it all. So that, in my mind, isn't success. For me personally, I went to high-level spine fellowship, had a successful practice. But starting about 1990, when I'm in practice about 5 years, I went from being this fearless spine surgeon to crippling anxiety in one day. I went from no anxiety, honestly, to a panic attack in one day. How could that be?
That was my next question.
Right. So I'll just ask you a couple of questions. We look at anxiety as somewhat of a psychological issue, right? Right? I'm just asking. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's what I was taught. But think about this, that every living creature has a survival response to stay alive. Humans have language, so we call it anxiety. Mm-hmm. It's simply a neurochemical survival reflex. Every living creature has it. Every human has it. Why would you call that a diagnosis or a disorder? It's actually the gift of life. If you didn't have anxiety, you wouldn't eat, you wouldn't breathe, you wouldn't take care of yourself. And the way we evolved as humans is that the species of creatures that paid attention to their environmental cues and took evasive action, they survived based on this evasive survival response. Mm-hmm. Okay, going back to human beings, we put the label on it called anxiety. And anxiety is not a psychological diagnosis. It's a neurochemical survival reflex that says danger. Mm. And then the antidote to anxiety is control. So either control yourself or the situation to resolve the problem. Anxiety drops down, you move on. When my cat is threatened, for instance, the housekeepers come over to the house, she goes right to the closet and sits there for a couple hours. The housekeepers leave while she comes out and she's fine. Humans have a major problem, I call it the curse of consciousness, is that we have thoughts. And the neuroscience research shows that thoughts go to the same part of the brain as a physical threat. So unpleasant thoughts go to the same part of the brain as a physical threat. You have the same chemical reaction, but you can't escape your thoughts. So we have a relentless exposure to threat that my cat doesn't have. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, going back to the original question, anxiety is necessary for life and survival. It's actually a gift. If we didn't have it, none of us would be here. You're not going to get rid of it. The unconscious brain processes about 11 million bits of information per second. The conscious brain processes about 40. 11 million to 40 ratio. So what happened to me as a surgeon, here I am, major spine surgeon, high-level spine fellowship, doing pretty much the most difficult cases that you can do. That I was sort of the end-of-the-line surgeon for many years. So I thought it was psychological. I went into counseling and therapy to talk about it, and it got worse. It kept getting worse and worse and worse. So you're trying to use these rational means 11 million to 40 ratio to solve this very powerful survival reaction, it's not possible. It's a complete mismatch. So I came out of it accidentally about 13 years later, but in the meantime, I kept getting worse and worse and worse, developed a bunch of physical symptoms. And what anxiety actually is just a sensation generated by your body's elevated stress chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, histamines, that type of thing. So you're full of stress chemicals, you can't escape your thoughts. So those are sustained elevations of these chemicals. And the sensation generated is anxiety. Just like you're lying on the beach and you're relaxed, you're in the sun, you're full of oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. But the description of the situation is relaxed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Relaxed is just a description of your body's neurochemical state. So when you're full of stress chemicals, the description is anxiety. It's just a description of the state of your body's survival response.
Mm.
And again, since we can't escape our thoughts, that survival response is sustained. So again, since every living creature has this response, you can't call it abnormal. You can't call it a diagnosis. It's not a mood disorder. It's a survival response. Now, there's lots. It's also intended to be so unpleasant that you have to take action,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it's not supposed to be a pleasant feeling. It never will be. You're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to solve it. So I'll ask you a rhetorical question that I don't think you'll get the answer to. I just really want the audience to understand this. Okay. So anxiety represents a heightened state of alertness. It helps you survive. It's not controllable by rational means. It simply represents elevations of your stress chemicals. How do you decrease anxiety?
I think I know you. It's something that I've been working on. So the way that I decrease anxiety is you mentioned earlier about the voices or the chats that you have in your inside of your mind, like a lot of meditation, a lot of exercising, a lot of different daily habits that I got to implement to kind of not silence that, but kind of quiet them a little bit. Right.
Right.
I think before a couple of years ago, I mean, I was ego driven, right? Like I didn't know what the ego was. Like I thought my thoughts were who I am. Like I'm not that. Like I have these negative thoughts, and I call it the monkey mind, where I have 1,000 different things going on up there, but that's not who I am. The ego telling me things like, getting emotional about somebody saying something negative about me. Like it's kind of releasing that and realizing and seeing the body, kind of like turning the mind around on itself and seeing the mind react to different things. Like that's how I've dealt with anxiety, is like noticing that and kind of, I mean, you fall asleep to it all the time. Like I do it all the time. Like I'll forget about that and I'll get in the moment and I won't remember that I'm not my ego. I'm not the emotional, urges that I have in my body or the monkey mind voices in my head. Like I forget and I'm in the moment, and then I have to take a step back and kind of meditate and say, you know what, man, you're not these negative voices. You're not this negative emotion. Like you just need to relax and kind of just be calm. I don't know. I mean, your story is like, you were just talking about this, which I definitely wanted to ask this question. So you were a doctor, a surgeon, a spine surgeon.
Right.
But you had mentioned you worked 20 years in construction. Like, how did you make that shift?
Well, I mean, I did orthopedics. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. So I started working construction work when I was 14 years old. And I worked during the school year, during the summers for 20 years to clear through medical school. I used to go up and do construction work to pay my medical bill, my tuition bills and stuff. So yeah, I was basically a journeyman carpenter. I built my parents' house the summer before medical school, did that almost by myself. So I just was a really hard worker, laborer. And of course, now being a spine surgeon, I don't know why they don't make 50-pound bags of concrete instead of 90-pound bags of concrete, or why are they making sheetrock 12 feet instead of 8 feet now? I mean, stuff like that just makes me crazy, right? So there's not a lot of consideration for the worker on the field as far as the world goes. But that's a whole different topic. So do you mind if I ask you a couple of personal questions?
Absolutely.
You don't have to answer them. Okay,
Fire
so
away.
can I ask how old you are?
I'm 36.
Okay, so my son's 35 and my daughter's 30. So your generation has a lot of anxiety.
I agree with
It's really sort of epidemic. And so your And we talked about all the reasons for it, but nonetheless, there's high levels of anxiety, and we keep trying to treat it psychologically. So I actually went into psychotherapy for 13 solid years and kept getting worse and worse and worse.
So you were a spinal surgeon, and then you
Right.
went into neuropsychology or neuroscience.
Nope, I sort of evolved out of my practice. So as I came out of my own chronic pain myself, I didn't realize that anxiety actually is the pain.
Mm.
Right? If you step on a nail, you become anxious, you take your foot off the nail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody threatens you verbally, you become anxious and you take evasive action, or of course you're trapped maybe. But anxiety just says danger. So it doesn't make sense that I would go from being literally a fearless spine surgeon, my attitude was bring it on, bring it on. But what I was effectively doing with that attitude, I simply covered up what was there. So what happens is that my body chemistry was way off and I had a panic attack. So I had this huge surge of adrenaline and cortisol. So my heart started to race. I started to sweat. I almost passed out. I was on the freeway at night. I honestly thought I was having a heart attack and I was going to die. And then of course, that wasn't the last of those panic attacks. From that moment on, I kept descending deeper and deeper into worse and worse anxiety, intrusive thoughts, all sorts of stuff. And the last 7 years I developed was called an obsessive compulsive disorder, which is manifested by very intrusive, vivid thoughts that you can't get rid of them. And then, as you well know, research has shown that we try not to think about something. Not only do you think about it more, you think about it a lot more. There's a trampoline effect. Okay, so the question is, anxiety represents elevations of stress chemicals. It is not psychological. It's a physiological response. And when I say physiology, it just means the state of the body's chemistry, blood pressure. Physiology represents the dynamic state of the body as far as your blood flow, sweating, all those things are physiological changes. So it really is a physiological problem that you're dealing with when you feel anxious. So it just says danger, bottom line. So the answer to the question is, how do you decrease anxiety? Is that you simply decrease stress chemicals. That is it.
Mm. Well, because you're feeling that anxiety, is that how you made this switch? Was there something, or was it something that, I don't know, specific that changed your mind about your profession and made you want to change?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to change. In other words, I actually quit at the peak of my career because what was happening is that chronic pain is a brain disease. Anxiety is the pain. And we're essentially doing spine surgery on anxiety. And it doesn't work. The success rate of a spine fusion for back pain is actually 22%. It's not very good.
No.
And so I get to the point I was seeing 5 or 6 people a week having surgeries recommended on normal spines. They weren't sleeping. They were anxious. They hadn't calmed down. I started sharing the tools with my patients that I learned myself coming out of my own hole. And I'm fine, by the way. But it took a lot of trial and error. And we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patients going to pain-free. And what happens is the anxiety drops. Remember, when your body's full of stress chemicals, every organ is affected in its own way. There's over 30 symptoms, physical symptoms, of a stressed nervous system. I had 17 of these at the same time. I had migraine headaches. There was ringing in my ears, burning in my feet, skin rashes, stomach issues, back pain. So what happens when your body is exposed to sustained levels of these stress hormones is similar to driving your car down the freeway in second gear, right? Your engine's racing, your body's on high alert. We also know there's a higher incidence of autoimmune disorders under chronic stress. And people know about stress management, but the stress that's problematic is the stress that you can't control, right? So that stress management thing is a huge misnomer. Anyway, going back to the original thing about perfectionism and self-esteem is that you have this anxiety-driven drive. It drives you to go harder and harder and harder. And what you're trying to do, you're trying to use rational means to deal with this irrational survival response. And so I call it the myth of self-esteem, because what you're doing in self-esteem, you're trying to get enough something, feeling better than other people around you, to somehow allay your anxiety. And what happens, you're either judging yourself, every interaction is better than or worse than, better than, worse than. You mentioned the ego. And especially if perfectionism in your own mind, you're always judging yourself against perfect. So there's no endpoint to that. So we use perfectionism to be, quote, successful. And what happens, you're really fired up, really anxious, really frustrated. And obviously you can accomplish lots of things from it. But at some point, it just breaks down. And I can't tell you the number of high-level professionals I know in different fields. They get to the top and they literally fall apart. with the ultimate. I mean, we just had a medical student at UCSF 2 weeks ago commit suicide, fourth year medical student. I have 19 colleagues dead from suicide. So you can't tell me that's success.
No, not at all. That's terrible. I mean,
Right?
that's a huge loss.
Okay. So going back to the original thing is, okay, perfection. So we talk about anxiety a little bit separately with perfectionism, but the bottom line is we use self-esteem, which is a rational means to deal with irrational survival responses. These responses are not psychological. The way you decrease anxiety is decrease the stress chemicals. So the first step is to separate from it, realize that anxiety is what you have. It's not who you are. In other words, anxiety is your bodyguard because it keeps you alive, helps you take on new challenges, alerts you to danger. It's what you have to protect yourself, but it's not who you are. It's not going away. It's extraordinarily powerful. The first step is to separate the reaction from who you are. Because if you identify with this reaction, it becomes your prison guard. Because we get imprisoned by our anxieties. So there's a bunch of ways of doing this, but the first thing is to say, look, understand that get rid of the word anxiety out of your vocabulary. And when you feel upset or agitated, just say, okay, my stress chemicals are elevated. And visualize a large thermometer and visualize you could be alert, nervous, afraid, paranoid, terrorized. I mean, it's different levels. There's different wordplay on the degree of anxiety or stress chemicals. But the bottom line is to decrease the stress chemicals. Mm-hmm. There's two categories of doing that. One of them is directly, which you just talked about, mindfulness, meditation, relaxation, exercise. Those are direct ways to decrease your stress chemicals. Like, for instance, just sit back in your chair for a second. Mm-hmm. Okay, call it active meditation. And what you're doing, you're switching from racing thoughts to a different sensation. And we do it during surgery, do it throughout the day, and just take 3 to 5 seconds and just feel the back of the chair. Or listen to sounds. Drop your shoulders a little bit. Okay, done. So we call it active meditation. So what you're doing is you're switching your brain from unpleasant thoughts to a different sensation. That's it. So as you change the sensory input, your chemical output changes. That's one of the main starting points with dropping down the stress chemicals. You just do it more and more during the day. I probably do it consciously maybe 20 or 30 times a day, but it becomes somewhat automatic. Somebody sort of pisses me off. I just sort of drop my shoulders down, done. That's it.
That's a great tip. I mean, I forget to do that. Like, work gets crazy, hectic, and it's kind of like I try to at least meditate. So my prime hours that I'm really focused, that I'm like optimum performance is like 10 a.m. to like noon, right? And then after lunch, it's slower just because I get up so early. I get before and I do my morning meditation, my morning rituals, whatever gets me ready, prime for the day. And then like 1 o'clock, I'm like, usually I'm pretty not stressed, but I'm just wore out. So like usually I try to have like some type of meditation for like 10 minutes.
Okay. So I think that's perfect. So what meditation does simply decreases your stress chemicals. Okay. So there's direct ways of doing it, of moment to moment. You get a little bit stressed out, just drop your shoulders, take a deep breath. And in surgery, when you get a little bit stressed out, you just drop your shoulders, take a deep breath. We go to light touch, because when you're doing light touch, you just do a better job. And what happens with surgery, it turns into sort of an art form and sculpting event. Instead of operating defensively, not making a mistake, it turns into a work of art. And I have been coached myself in this technique during surgery. My fellows got coached, and our complication rates probably dropped 80%. I mean, it's really remarkable. But the other way is called neuroplasticity of when you have a stress, you're going to have an automatic survival response of stress chemicals, right? Okay, so what you're doing, you're changing the response. You can dampen the response. Remember, all you're trying to do to decrease anxiety is decrease the stress chemicals. So neuroplasticity is the brain changing shape every second. New neurons, new connections, new insulation. We didn't realize this in medical school, but the brain changes every second. So what you're doing, you're changing it from stress automatic survival response to stress. You create a little bit of space, and then you change the response. One tool to do that is called cognitive behavioral therapy. We put down the unpleasant thought, then you categorize it, and then in the third column, you write down the more appropriate thought. And that's outlined in a book called Feeling Good by David Burns. And it was implemented the whole extremely quickly because, again, you're changing from maladaptive thoughts to more appropriate thoughts. Again, you're changing the sensory input. The other thing we do, which is hugely critical, is called expressive writing. You simply write down your thoughts, and they can be positive or negative, by the way, but you write down your thoughts and you immediately tear them up. And it is the one thing that pulled me out of the hole after 15 solid years, was simply writing down my thoughts and tearing them up.
Really?
Yep. And I was by accident that I found across it. And I initially thought it was the book, but actually it's the writing. There's over 1,000 research papers that documents that different forms of expressive writing are effective. And the people that did the research on thought suppression finally concluded that you can't talk about it, you can't analyze it. I mean, there's things you can do after you do the writing, but the bottom line is the writing creates an awareness of the thoughts. You're now separated from them. The thoughts are on the table. You're here. There's a space that's connected with vision and feel. That's part of the unconscious brain. And for whatever reason, it's the only mandatory part of the project is the expressive writing. And if people are interested, I wrote the book called Back in Control, A Surgeon's Roadmap Out of Chronic Pain. The website is backincontrol.com, completely open source, easy to get on. And it takes you through 4 stages of the journey. And in stage 1, laying the foundation, the first step is to learn about the pain, which comes from the book. The second step is the expressive writing. And nothing really happens until you start the writing. And you're tearing the thoughts up for 2 reasons. First of all, there's trillions of thoughts in your head. You're not going to get rid of these thoughts. You're simply separating. And what you're doing, you're tearing these thoughts up to write with freedom, number 1. And second of all, you're trying not to analyze them. Because if you're trying to analyze them and fix them, where's your attention? Think in terms of neuroplasticity, not psychology, is that as you simply separate, remember, so neuroplasticity is awareness, separation, then you redirect. The writing does the awareness and separation in one, the writing does the awareness and separation in one move. Again, just drop your shoulders for a second. Okay. And you just redirect it. Feel the back of the chair. Listen to any sounds you might have in your house. Okay, so it's awareness, separation, reprogramming. The writing does awareness and separation in one move. The act of meditation redirects your attention. And that's it. So the writing is not the solution, but it is, for whatever reason, the mandatory starting point. And again, 13 years of psychotherapy is a lot of psychotherapy, and I am a strong supporter of psychology. The psychology gives you wisdom and support and guidance, but you can't fix yourself. So if you try to fix yourself, where's your attention?
That's a good question, though. Like, I think about it. If you're trying to fix yourself, where is your attention?
Right.
Is it on the future or is it the past?
It's on you.
It's on me.
Yep. Again, go back to the perfectionism mode. You have an idea of what you want. All of us have, I think you do. I won't speak for you. I'll speak for me. I mean, we all have ideas about what we want our lives to look like, right? Or how we should be, or what our flaws are, et cetera.
Well, we spend a lot of time in the future thinking about future problems.
Right. But we also are hyper aware of our, quote, flaws, right? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, absolutely.
And my point's been for a while is if all of us have flaws, why is anybody flawed? Just being human, right? Anyway, that's a different topic. So it's awareness, separation, reprogramming. So the key issue here is to simply separate from your thoughts, de-energize them, and then you put your mind in a different direction.
Well, let me ask you this before you go forward, right?
Sure.
So you were talking about ripping up your thoughts. Like, give me an example of that, right? Like, so what type of thought? Like, what would you write down?
So here's the reason why you tear them up, because a lot of thoughts are bizarre and despicable thoughts. So you remember there's whole research done on obsessive thought patterns. That's why people end up with such bizarre behaviors, because it has been shown that the more of a conscientious, well-intentioned person you are, the more prone you are to these negative thoughts, because people that are sociopathic don't filter. See, when you filter a thought and try to suppress it or do something with it, you've given it neurological attention and you've reinforced it. So obsessive thought patterns happen because of something forbidden, some crazy idea comes in your head just randomly. Of course, you brush it aside. I wrote a website post called Your Demons Are Robots. And so what we consider our demons are actually who we're not, right? Because we're suppressing them and we keep tossing them aside. But over 20, 30, 40 years, these things become torturous. let's take body image disorders. I mean, eating disorders are a big deal, right? And so what happens, you have some little flaw that you have this beautiful person, they have some perceived flaw with their nose or the ears or the eyes or something. So they think about it, they get frustrated. They try not to think about it, and it even gets worse. And with repetition, these little flaws become these monsters, they become their demons. Or there might be some inappropriate activity you happen to put into your brain for some reason, you watch a TV show or something. And of course, as you keep tossing it aside, it starts to grow. And so there's a whole bunch of research on what's called URTs, unpleasant repetitive thoughts, developing these obsessive thought patterns. And then what happens, they become independent circuits. Have you ever heard of phantom limb pain, where somebody has their leg amputated?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Think about that for a second. You have a leg that's gone. You not only feel the leg, you actually feel the same pain you had before the leg was amputated. How can that be?
No clue.
Because remember the pain's in the brain, the pain's not in the leg, the pain's in the nervous system. And so in about 6 to 12 months, pain becomes memorized in the brain, like riding a bicycle. Once those circuits are in there, you can't get rid of them. So if you have leg pain before the amputation, you'll have the same pain afterwards about 55% of the time. But it's not because the pain is in the leg, the pain's actually in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing like riding a bicycle or learning a sport. Okay, so what happens with obsessive thought patterns, anxiety-producing thoughts, is I call it phantom brain pain. And those little dust devils in the desert, they're like mini tornadoes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're powerful. These thought patterns are not subject to rational interventions. And so they are irrational, independent. I call it phantom brain pain. You can't stop them. You try to reason with them and fix them or cope with them or compensate for them. Lots of crazy behaviors come out. And your life is sort of miserable trying to deal with these phantom brain pains, right?
Yeah.
So again, somehow the writing, I call it mechanical meditation, starts breaking these things up. And again, you can do what you want to do. But if you're inclined to do this, look at my website, Stage 1, Step 2, Expressive Writing. So I start out with the free thoughts like, let's say John's a jerk. I hate him. Okay, whoever it is. Just, and it gets way worse than that because they're just thoughts. So again, you're not solving the thoughts. You're simply separating from them. Remember, it's awareness, separation, reprogramming. So the thoughts give you an awareness, separation in one move. And then the active meditation gives you a reprogramming or redirection process. And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how things change. It's ridiculous. I mean, I think there's a certain amount of disbelief to it, including myself, where how can something so simple have such a profound effect? But it's been shown to actually improve academic performance, school performance. It helps wound healing. Wound heal twice as fast with this exercise. It solves autoimmune disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, asthma. It's ridiculous. I mean, there's a book
writing
out.
your thoughts down and then tearing them up has contributed to a lot of these symptoms.
Well, again,
decreasing these symptoms.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a book out. Dr. James Pennebaker started the research in 1982. He happens to be on my podcast, and you would love to talk to him, by the way. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you. But he started the original research in 1982 on these obsessive thought patterns and then in the expressive writing, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in Seattle. His daughter lives in Seattle, and we were having dinner with him. And we asked him, why does this work? He goes, I don't know. I mean, we don't. There's a lot of debate about why it works, but the bottom line is it's consistently effective. And of the hundreds of patients I watch go to pain-free, nothing really happens until they start the expressive writing. It's remarkable.
What about depression? We've been talking a lot about anxiety, but what's your thoughts on depression?
I blog for Psychology Today once or twice a week. I wrote a website post called Depression is Anxiety. And depression is anxiety. And I went through major depression as part of my whole process. And so I thought anxiety is psychological. It's not. And depression is just a set of symptoms driven by anxiety. So first of all, everybody with depression has anxiety, but not everybody with anxiety has depression. That's the first clue. Then you wake up early in the morning, can't fall back asleep. That's racing thoughts, anxiety. Then you can't fall asleep. So again, racing thoughts, anxiety. Then you're not sleeping. which again, another symptom of depression. Then you can't concentrate, which is a combination of anxiety and lack of sleep. Then your energy levels are down because you're not sleeping. But when your body's full of stress chemicals, of course, you're fatigued.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then your appetite drops down. And we do know that adrenaline and cortisol, particularly adrenaline, actually shut down the blood supply to the gut. So, of course, you lose your appetite. Then you start losing weight. So, depression is just, I maintain depression is just a set of symptoms driven by anxiety. So again, if you look on Psychology Today, I've written a blog called Anxiety is the Pain. And it was one of the more popular blogs I wrote was Depression is Anxiety. Same thing. So it's a whole different topic, which I'd love to talk about in a separate show, but
Sure. No.
I think that right now we get these psychological labels put on us that are not accurate. Bipolar, that's driven by anxiety. ADD, attention deficit disorder, that's driven by anxiety, right? Obsessive compulsive disorder, which I had, is one of the ultimate anxiety disorders. And I know there's genetics and environment, et cetera. But the bottom line is that anxiety drives essentially every diagnosis. Addictions, right? Look at the opioid epidemic. Okay.
Yeah.
So I took 40% of my surgical practice was with people with IV drug abuse. They would get infected spines that we'd have to surgically treat. It was the mental pain that drove people to opioids. It wasn't the physical pain. And the mental pain just absolutely tortured these people. And they're nice people. But so masking behaviors, again, addictions are driven by anxiety.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because, like, you think about people that have alcoholism or whatever, like they want to, psychedelics. They want to change their thought patterns. They want to change what's going on in their minds. It makes total sense.
Right. So I'm curious from my perspective. So this is a big paradigm shift for most people. I'm just curious your thoughts right now, what you heard me say, how you feel. What are your thoughts about this paradigm shift?
All right. So paradigm shift for
anxiety.
Right. Anxiety. Well, my thing is my anxiety was always driven by my thoughts. Until I was able to realize what the brain really does and how it's wired. Like so I'm very lucky that I'm talking to you now as opposed to 3 years ago, because I've read a ton of books on psychotherapy. I have a friend of mine, Doug Brackman, who is a psychotherapist, and we talk a lot about this. And he has his book out is called Driven, and he talks about the hunter gatherer mind, right? Like there's been 2 alleles that have been discovered since the study of alcoholism. They studied the alcoholism gene, and they found these 2 alleles, like the D2, D4. One is the grass is greener on the other side gene, and the other one is linked to ADHD, ADD. I find myself very similar to the ADD. Like I was never diagnosed with it, but there's always been I am always like, it's hard to keep my attention on things. Like it's definitely is like I'm very visual. I'm a visual learner. Like if you look at my mind in a fMRI machine, like I'm very like I'm predominantly in the back. I guess it's occipital area, whatever you want to call that, where it focuses more on the eyesight and instead of the prefrontal cortex, where a lot of the analytical minds reside. But the point being is that, he helped me realize that a lot of the voices that I was hearing was just me, like not the monkeys again, like the ego. And it's helped me. And that's helped me reduce my anxiety, the pain. Like before that, I just thought it like what you were talking about before. Like I thought it was a disorder. I thought it was something wrong with me. I thought that I wasn't, I was broken.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. Well, I mean, thoughts do create the ongoing anxiety. Humans can't escape their thoughts. You can experience them, suppress them, or mask them, but humans cannot escape their thoughts. That's why we're exposed to this constant elevation of stress chemicals. So anxiety is just the elevation of stress chemicals. That's it. So again, you can't really talk this stuff out. You have to actually simply decrease the stress chemicals. So going back to my website for a second, under stage 1, you have the learn about chronic pain. The second step is the expressive writing. The third step is the active meditation. The fourth one is sleep. It's huge. And we found that lack of sleep actually induces chronic pain. And I don't really go very far with anybody. I mean, when you look at the expressive writing, I want to be really clear with your audience that it is not the solution. It does awareness separation. It doesn't reprogram. That's where the mindfulness meditation comes into play. So the neuroplasticity is awareness separation, then redirecting. And you're not just distracting yourself, you're really redirecting your attention to a different spot. But there's a little saying that one of my friends brought up, who's a pain psychologist, is that you have to feel to heal. In other words, you have to allow yourself to feel the anxiety, then you redirect. If you're trying to fight it, you want to fight.
I heard that before. I don't mean like it makes sense. Like,
right.
There's also something, name it and tame it.
Right.
You name it, like when you feel it, you name, like I'm feeling anxiety or whatever,
right.
Like I'm feeling sad, and you name it, and then it helps you, but you got to feel it though, right? Like you got to filter it through your heart. Like I was reading a book. Oh my goodness, what is it? I cannot remember the name of the book, but however, it was like, you have to feel it. You have to like literally sit in it and feel it and filter it through the heart in order, because you just can't run from it.
Right. And then the final step in stage one, this is a surprise one. We did workshops back east at a place called the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. And my wife and I and daughter did workshops based on awareness, hope, forgiveness, and play. So forgiveness is a more complex way of aware you're angry. Forgiveness is separating, and then play is reprogramming. And when you're angry, your stress chemicals are way out of balance. When you're at play, you're full of oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. And so the antithesis of anger is play. And it's not obsessive play to distract yourself. It's truly just enjoying the moment you're in. And a lot of moments aren't so enjoyable. It is what it is. A lot of moments are enjoyable. So it's really connecting to what's right in front of you. But the final step in stage one is we never let people discuss their pain or complain or give advice or be critical. Because where's your attention?
On me?
Well, yeah, it's in a negative spot, right? So if you're talking about your pain, your attention's on the pain. That's true, again, with mental pain. So it's a dramatic thing. And we talk about, and again, there's a whole set of concepts around family issues, but families tend to trigger each other. What's ironic about the human race is that the deeper our relationships, the deeper the triggers, and our families are the biggest triggers. So it's the people we love that sometimes we treat the worst, right? It's a problem. So once you understand this whole triggering nature, you actually can deal with it. But one of the biggest things we ask our patients to do with quite dramatic results, almost as dramatic as expressive writing, is that when you walk out of the door of my office, you'll never discuss your pain or medical care with any other human being again except your physicians. That's it. And you're not going to complain. And you're not going to gossip. And you're not going to give your family unasked for advice. You're not going to be critical. Basically, you're going to be nice. And it sounds trite, but if you think in terms of neuroplasticity, not psychology, you're not trying to, you just simply, I don't even want to use the word philosophical. You're just trying to put your brain in a good spot. I ask a lot of people now not to watch the news.
Yeah, I don't.
Because it just gets your stress chemicals elevated. I don't care what your viewpoints are. It's just all so contentious. People get really hyper because of the whole, controversy and everything that's going on. So if you think in terms of your brain's going to develop, again, neuroplasticity is a big deal. Wherever you place its attention, if you're in that mode of talking about your pain, either mental or physical, that's where your brain develops. And inadvertently, we found this out at the workshops, one of the ground rules was just that. You cannot discuss your pain at all. I didn't realize that people in chronic pain actually discuss their pain a high percent of the time, over and over and over again. I've had lots of patients look at me and go, well, what do we talk about, honestly? But it's not that interesting to other people. It really takes the family down. And we just found out by working with the family dynamics, really by an arbitrary set of rules, which is also in stage one of the website, is a huge, huge shift. Usually within a couple of weeks, people really quit discussing their pain. Within 2 weeks, they come back in, and there was always a huge shift in mood and in their pain. It happened quickly.
Wow, that's amazing. So the one thing I want to point out is that you are very intelligent. You are very on point with a lot of the science, but you were an orthopedic complex spinal deformity surgeon,
Right.
which is very niche. And you quit that. Like you quit your
Right.
practice
Right.
and you went into, reintroduce true healing in medicine. Like,
Right.
why?
Okay. So what happened between the book and the website is about 9% self-directed. So I can't tell you how excited people are coming out of chronic pain. But at the same time, I'm watching patient after patient after patient come through my office having surgeries done or recommended on normal spines. And so they weren't getting any sleep. They were anxious as could be. They were stressed out, a lot of major life events. And again, when you know you're under a lot of stress, your body chemistry changes. It's not psychological, it's physiological. So the data says calm down people's nervous system before you do surgery. So I was seeing 3 to 5 patients every week having major operations done on basically normal spines without any of this work being done. So the contrast between these people getting better without surgery, some with surgery, of course, but most without surgery, and people being badly damaged with surgery just drove me nuts. And I really felt compelled to do this. And that's a part I have a little trouble with right now myself, is that we have lots of knowledge. The data's right there. In other words, we're spending billions of dollars searching for the cure for chronic pain. We already know what it is. We already know what it is. So everything in the book that I have written is well-established medical treatments, been established for decades. It's also been documented that the business of medicine is completely ignoring it.
Yeah.
The essence of healing is feeling safe, right? If you feel safe, your biochemistry is optimized. So right now, the business of medicine is taking away our capacity to talk to our patients. So you can't even talk to your doctor. We're making major decisions to do 8, 10, 12-hour surgeries on the first visit. In the midst of some horrendous family crises, we don't know what's going on. It makes no sense. So patients are coming in and literally targets. I just wrote a 3rd book called Do You Really Need Spine Surgery? Take Control with a Surgeon's Advice. And what it does, it takes account the anatomy, whether it's operable or not. It takes into account the state of the nervous system, whether it's calm or stressed. And if you take somebody with minimal anatomy and a stressed nervous system, the chance of success is about 20% or less. If you have somebody who's calm, going through life just fine, they have a structural problem, surgery works fine, no problem. But I saw so much surgery be done on a normal spine, probably 5 or 6 a week. Mm-hmm. And I hit a spot where this one kid who's 30 years old had a surgery he didn't need, paralyzed. And I remember the day, I remember the moment I said, I'm done. I'm just not going to do this anymore. So I made a strong commitment to really, I don't know how far I'll get with this one, but the number one thing we could do to change the face of medicine, actually solve our medical crisis, is actually pay doctors to listen to the patients. I mean, physicians want to talk to their patients. And one thing that's contributing to burnout is that we don't talk to our patients. The number one factor actually reversing burnout is actually talking to our patients. The medical systems actually won't let us talk to our patients anymore. They won't let us. They actually monitor us to make sure we see a certain quota. So it becomes a big assembly line that is just no fun for the patients, no fun for the doctors, and it's all about production. And it's a huge problem. So I quit about a year ago, and so it's been tough. I mean, I led my practice. I had a great team, great staff. We watched all sorts of people get better, taught the fellows. So it's very just frustrating me that I feel like there's such a deep need for this project, but I can't put into words the stuff I see in clinic every day.
Wow. I mean, but you're so up on psychotherapy. Are you practicing psychotherapy at all, like clients or patients?
No, and I wouldn't even call it psychotherapy. I mean, here's the deal. It's about 90% self-directed. So the patients that have gotten better have never seen a psychologist. I mean, I would be interested if you have an inclination to actually go through the website on your own, start the expressive writing relaxation. And if we talk to them after 6 weeks, I think you'll find a massive difference in just everything.
Sure.
And I'd love to have another interview with you just to find out how it all went and some of your questions about what's going on. But people don't need to see a psychologist, even though I do like them when you have them available, but it's not that many of them compared to the chronic pain problem. But just the writing, relaxation, talk about the pain, forgiveness, anger is all self-directed.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, the reason why I think the book and the concepts have been successful, first of all, they're not new. They've been in the literature for 50 years. And what I did as a surgeon, I presented an organized, structured approach where people can get their head around it. And then it's a framework that people can figure out their own solutions for it. So it's a very, very much self-directed process.
Mm. Do you think, I mean, this is some good stuff, but do you think people will get confused with the title? Do you really need spine surgery? Like, I'd rather learn about what you're talking about right now.
Well, there's two titles. Depends what's going on. So the one's called Back in Control, A Surgeon's Roadmap Out of Chronic Pain. So that's what we just talked about most of the time here. But a lot of people right now are being asked to undergo spine surgery. For instance, on the forward of my new book, there's a 27-year-old guy who had 3 surgeons in 2 weeks recommend surgery like now. He saw me, he had a normal spine, nothing to do. He'd been in chronic pain for a year. He started working through my causes, mostly on his own. And 5 years later, he's backpacking, technically climbing in the mountains, 0 limitations, 0 pain, and just doing just fine.
Really?
Absolutely. Anxiety's down. He's killing it at work. He's doing fine. I have another girl who'd been in chronic pain for 15 years, high anxiety. Within 6 months, anxiety's gone. Her pain is gone. She's taken on a new career. She's killing it. She's 35 years old.
Wow.
So I talked to a girl last night, 4 years of chronic pain, 10 physicians, 6 injections, high-dose narcotics. She's been pain-free for 5 years, 2 beautiful kids, and she is so excited. It's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I'd say.
So,
I mean, you're changing people's lives.
That's why I had to quit. So the reason why the book's effective was, again, I was in chronic pain myself, horribly, severely, extreme chronic pain, 10 out of 10 pain for 15 solid years. That's a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as I worked my way out of it with trial and error, I found ways that people could get better and gradually became more consistent. The neuroscience research the last 5 or 6 years has been very clear about what the solution is. So combining my own pretty deep experience with the neuroscience research, that's why I think the process has been so effective. But it's just taking well-established, effective medical principles and just applying them in an organized manner. That's how it works.
You're very intelligent. Seriously, I want to know what book has inspired you the most. Like, seriously, just talking to you, like, I got to read that thing.
You're going to love this one. This is way out of left field. It's called Parent Effectiveness Training.
Really?
Yeah. It's written in the 1970s by a child psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas Gordon, and it's an awareness book. And I read it when my son was 2, and I would tell you he was never officially disciplined ever. And it's not about permissive parenting. It's about being clear. It's about awareness. And so you take the parent label off, you take the child label off, you just go human to human. And it just changed my life. That book changed my life. So it's about relationships in general with your spouse, with your partners, your colleagues. And I've probably read the book at least 20, 25 times. And I've probably given it to 500 or 600 people over the years. I don't know. But it's a remarkable book. Do you have children?
Yeah, I have 3.
How old are they?
Well, our oldest is 9, and middle girl is 7, and the youngest just turned 1.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't tell you how. It's a classic written in the 1970s. The guy is, when you read the book, it is so brilliant. You can't believe you're having to read this book to figure this out. He is so clear. You'll be blown away.
Awareness. I think there's a book right now that I'm reading. It's titled Awareness. Let me just pull it up real quick because I forget it so much. By
DeMello, right?
It is Dr. Daniel Siegel.
Yeah,
Aware.
Yeah.
I just started that. But I'm just fascinated with awareness, right? But people don't understand what I'm talking about when I say awareness. They think that just being conscious is being aware. No.
The other book on awareness is called The Way to Love by Dr. Anthony DeMello.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Meditations of Anthony DeMello. And he defines love as awareness. So it's really the way to awareness. And it's the most clear. It's a little meditations book. It's only about 2 inches and 2 inches by 2 inches. And I read it 2 or 3 times every week the last 10 years. And just to get my mind around the idea that we get attached to things. And he's pretty blunt, but it's very clear, very inspiring.
What's the name of that book again?
Called The Way to Love. It's on stage 2 on my website. It's part of the anger chapter. But, like you pointed out before, is that you get angry because of your ego. And see what you're essentially doing, go back into your language there, is that by doing the writing awareness, you're doing what David Burns talked about, is just kill your ego. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And then you start living life in awareness, which means some things are pleasant, some things are unpleasant, but you start taking the labels off. So instead of good day, bad day, it's just the day. You get to experience the day. Because when you put life in a good day, bad day, life becomes a little bit binary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as you start becoming aware of the labels you put onto other people, other situations, what you're really doing is projecting your view of yourself onto other people in other situations. And when you live life in awareness, it becomes infinitely interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you kind of see their ego, right? You see
Right.
where they're coming from. If you can step back and say, I'm going to just I'm going to be here in this moment.
Right.
Another person, and you see them getting all crazy and acting like angry or fearful or whatever. You're like, man. And then you can kind of be aware of their ego, and then you go from there. Like, it's helped me.
So just drop your shoulders for a second again. Okay. And just let your jaw muscles relax. Feel your feet on the floor. That's it. I mean, how did that feel?
Relaxing,
Yeah.
calming.
Right. So again, the reason I call it active meditation, because it's real time. You don't have to add it onto your day. And then actually it saves time during the day, because if you think about the time you spend being anxious and reactive and whatever, it's a waste of time. It takes up time. And just, dropping it down. Again, the message I love to leave your group, your audience, is that anxiety is simply a danger signal. That's it. It's a chemical response. Every living creature has it. It's not abnormal. It's normal. It's how we live. And it's how we deal with it determines how we're successful in life. And we talked about perfectionism a little bit, which we didn't really get to finish on. But self-esteem, perfectionism, all those things keep this body cranked up. And what you're trying to do is recognize the factors that keep it cranked up. But it doesn't matter why your body's cranked up. The tools that drop down stress chemicals are the same no matter what the source of the stress is.
I love that. How can people connect with you? Go ahead and say your website.
The website's backincontrol.com, one word. The book is Back in Control, A Surgeon's Roadmap Out of Chronic Pain. And the most recent book about spine surgery also has a lot of this concepts in there called Do You Really Need Spine Surgery? Take Control with a Surgeon's Advice. And procedures, let me just finish up with one concept here, is that 2 months ago in the Journal of Pain, it's been documented that every procedure we do in the presence of chronic pain has been shown to be ineffective. So we're literally pretending to practice medicine right now for chronic pain, and it doesn't work. So there's two parts to this story today. One of them is you're having procedures done to be fixed. Not going to work. The chronic pain is a brain disease. And then once you understand that it's a brain disease, there are so many ways to calm it down that are so risk-free and so simple, you'll be blown away. The essence of healing is feeling safe.
Yeah, I love it. Doc, one last question before you go. What do you want your legacy to be?
I just want to, it's sort of funny you say that, because I've been thinking about this a little bit. For lots of reasons, it was hard for me is that this is a big project. When you're a surgeon and have structure, you take care of your patients, you do your charts, you make your phone calls, you have some structure. So this is a project without an endpoint. So going back to our conversation is that I've been through so much grief on this project, because change doesn't come easy, that my ego is sort of dead. And so I don't necessarily have to be remembered for anything. But if I can leave the fact behind that anxiety is solvable, I'd like to see the paradigm shift changed on a society-wide basis. I'd be pretty excited about that.
That's perfect. Sounds good to me. I just want to say thank you, Doc, for coming on the show. I love talking about neuroscience. I love talking about psychotherapy. I love everything that you're about. I'm excited to get a hold of your book and read some more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate being on the show, and I love sharing these thoughts. It's fantastic.
That was an amazing episode, guys. I really hope it helped you out in your journey. I hope it helped you out as far as learning more about what the brain is doing and the chemicals that are released. And I just hope that it helped inspire you to be curious about what you can do to change your habits. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for hanging out, and I will talk to you later.